What's leadership? Who is a leader? What does it take to find success as a leader? These questions and more are explored throughout the episodes on supporting leaders. Listeners get to hear from a diverse group of experts within a wide range of industry. Come along with us on the road to growth and learning. I'm your host, Dr. Lisa Hartman. All right. Well, welcome you guys. This is the second episode of season 2 of Supporting Leaders. And I am so excited for you guys to hear from Adam Welcome and Rachael George. So this is really funny. I went to the National Association of Secondary School Principals Conference. It was in Chicago because how could I not go with it being in Chicago? So very first morning, I go downstairs. I'm like, I just need a spot to check my email. And there's these like couches and this like really cool kind of cozy spot. And I'm like, oh, I'll just kind of listen. And as I'm listening, I'm like, oh my gosh, these two people are so cool. Like, I need to know more. And like, they're talking about like how to use podcasts to promote your school and like everything they're saying. I'm like, yes, yes, yes. And so like afterwards, I sent some messages and I'm like, hey, would you guys want to be on my show? And they were like, heck yes. It was like that day you guys responded. So Adam and Rachael, I'm super happy to have you guys. So thank you for giving up your time to be with us on the show today.
Well, thanks for having us, Lisa. We're super excited to be chatting with you.
We are. Always a good time.
Awesome. So I was telling you guys before the show, I said, you guys have your hands in like everything. You guys like do so many things. There's books, there's podcasts, there's leadership groups, there's principalship. So let's start with Rachael. Fill us in, give us a little bit about your background, and then we'll go over to Adam.
Yeah, you bet. So education is actually a second career for me. I spent 11 years in the Forest Service fighting fire. So I often joke that I went from putting out fires in the forest in the middle of the wilderness to putting out fires in bathrooms, which was legit as a middle school principal. So right up until like 3 days before I showed up for my first principal job, still worked at the Forest Service and fire engines, hand crews, hot shots, you name it. Favorite was working on helicopters. Loved that. I can still name the helicopters that I see flying overhead. So love it, love it. Have spent time at every level, high school, elementary, middle school. It was kind of like the Goldilocks effect, but really settled in at middle school as a middle school teacher, as a middle school principal, but most recently have spent 7 years as an elementary principal. Loved it, like retirement land. But if you're watching this on video, like I'm not near retirement. So have recently moved to the district office, and I'm still a preschool principal, which I love, and negotiated to keep that, but also am working with student services and teaching and learning, which is one of my favorite. And outside of like the normal 9 to 5, I work with Adam on a handful of things, and I just really, really enjoy it. Some coaching, some podcasting, the Innovative Principal Circle, the fellows with NAESP, and I just really like to be involved. Adam helped inspire me to pick up some writing. So I have published my first book with some friends, Navigating the Leadership Learning Curve with Kate Barker and Courtney Frua. I have another book that's coming out in a couple months. It's specifically on women in educational leadership from the superintendent level all the way down to teacher leadership, which really stoked about that. And I like to be busy, which I think is why Adam and I have a lot of things in common, that we like to be busy and we like to get after it and make things happen. So that's me in a nutshell.
We already talked about how hard it was going to be to keep this around 25 minutes. There's like so many things I want to ask you just in that. But we have another guest on the show. This is actually my first time I've had 2 guests on at the same time. So this will be really fun. So Adam, can you compete with Rachael's background?
Yeah, well, you'll just have to have us on again. We'll do round 2 with Rachael and Adam as another episode. So lifelong educator, teacher, vice principal, director of innovation for a large school district. And then I just got into presenting and blogging. And then my first book, Kids Deserve It, really changed my life from a professional standpoint. And I started speaking all over the country. And then kind of my day job was costing me money. That's not really like the best way to articulate it, but it really was. And just opportunity that I wanted to chase after. So I left my district job, which I actually never really thought about it this way, but a lot of people have brought this up. They're like, you left 15 years of retirement and benefits to really kind of go off on your own. And for me, it wasn't even a factor. I wanted to go see what I could do. And for the last 5 years, I've just been a full-time speaker, consultant, doing just doing work with, I think, over 250 school districts I'm up to now across the country. 250 keynotes I've done. And I've always kind of been involved with NASP a little bit. And then last year got back involved with them because I was an interim principal just for 7 months during COVID, helping out a school. And Rachael and I have been buddies for a while. We were supposed to run a marathon in Eugene, and that event got canceled like 2 years ago because of COVID. So you still owe me a marathon, Rachael George.
That I do.
And just have hung out with Rachael and her husband, John, and just like awesome friends. And we just work so well together. So well. Rachel's like my work wife. Even though it's not really work because we're just doing extracurricular activities that help out leaders across the country. That's kind of how I look at it.
Yeah. So, okay, I want to ask you a question. You guys both talked about all these things, right? Not just like, oh, I'm a principal, but there was like a list and a list and a list and a list. And then you guys talk about running marathons. And so, I am fascinated by, I don't even think there is a such thing as work-life balance, but that work-life fit. With all that you guys have going on, obviously leadership and impacting people around education is incredibly important to you. How have you found time to not only just, I wouldn't even say include physical health in your routine, but like clearly you're very dedicated to it if you can run marathons. So tell me more about how you have fit that into your already busy lives.
Well, I can just say from my standpoint, it kind of started, my dad was a teacher and he never lived like a super healthy life. He didn't exercise, he smoked, and he passed away about 10 years ago from cancer, but also the cancer was going to kill him. And then a heart attack did. He wasn't healthy. So I think that's always been in the back of my brain. Like I want to live a healthy life because I want to live a long time. So some people fit healthy lifestyles into their life, and I just live a healthy lifestyle. Everything else actually fits into it. So, I mean, now my wife and I, we run every day together. I wake up at 4:15, I have coffee, I do some stuff on the computer. I wake her up at 5:15 and we go run 3 to 6 miles every single day. So it's not a question. It's kind of like principals out there that are listening. When I was a principal, I was just in classrooms every single day. So another way to look at it is to put on your schedule visiting classrooms. And to me, that's just the wrong way to look at it, because then you're trying to fit what you actually should be doing, which is a priority, into your day, but just do that. And then other things happen around that. So then you can't make an excuse. Oh my God, the day got busy. I was in meetings, whatever, right? The list is long. And you just feel better when you work out and exercise and take care of your body. I know that I do.
I would completely agree. It's funny, Adam, you run with your wife, and I joke that I run with John, but John's not a runner. But what we've taken to is that he rides the golf cart behind me in the evening and chases me. He sometimes is like, I should have a golf club out to like whack you, which would not make me go faster. He probably would get the golf club like swung around at him. But it's interesting. I really took up running. I mean, I've ran since high school, but during the recession, it was my saving grace. I was always on the cusp of being riffed, and I would go out and run 16 miles, come back and not care. Do I have a job? Do I not? I'm going to be able to wake up the next day. Life will still go on. The day will end, the day will start, and everyone will be okay. So that practice has been ebb and flow as a principal, just due to stress. And it's one that when I have in my life that I'm completely dialed in with. And, I actually do a keynote on self-care and balance for educational leaders. And it's something that we struggle with all the time. It's something that I constantly have to work on. I joke that I'm a recovering workaholic, and hearing all the pieces that I do, you probably would say, Rachael, you're not recovering. Like, you still are a workaholic, but I would actually argue differently. These are things that I'm really passionate about. I really, really enjoy their interest areas. And the way I do that is by setting boundaries. My mom, similar to Adam's dad, was an educator. She was an elementary principal, and near retirement, it was like crash and burn with her health. And after she retired, she has not been able to do all the things that she wanted to do because chronic stress broke her body down. It just burnt her out. Things broke. And I don't want that. I want a really awesome life that I'm able to do some amazing things and have great memories. So being preventative and making sure my health is first is definitely an important. So I was just meeting with elementary principals this week, and I'm like, my commitment to you, I'm not sending emails on the weekend, not sending emails in the evening. If you need me, call me. I'll see your email, but I'm not responding to it because you need to take a break for yourself. So
boundaries. Love that. And I feel like I heard a theme too between the two of you of like the preventative care, and that it's also part of your mental health care routine. And so, you know, talking about that too, and ending with you there on that, Rachael, and I want to talk too about just leadership in general and some of the things that you've learned. And, you know, Rachael, I was really curious about your book, Navigating the Leadership Curve. I'm going to have to put it in the Amazon cart when we're done here. And then now you're saying you've written one specifically about women. So I'd love to hear from you guys about, you know, what have you guys learned about leadership along the way? And Rachael, if you want to talk specifically too, maybe about some things that are in your upcoming book about women in leadership, but what are some really critical things you guys have learned as you work with leaders?
What I've learned, I've had the opportunity to keynote, I don't know, 10 to 15 state principal conferences around the country, and just the work that I've done, mentoring, coaching, talking to leaders around the country for the last 10 years. And then the work that Rachael and I do with NASP. I mean, the biggest thing that I knew going in, and then it's actually it's validation, is people are working. I think they're working too hard. I want to be remembered as a hard worker and not a workaholic. And they try to do everything. My mantra is I want to do as little as possible. And people come to take that like, what are you talking about, Adam? Like, I'm the principal. I know, I have been one too. Like, I've sat in that chair, because when you do as little as possible, I'm not saying don't work hard, but don't do everything. Say, should I be doing this, or should somebody else be doing this? Or the most important thing I think is, should nobody be doing this? And that third one I think is the most important and the most prevalent, and the one that people don't talk about enough, because we're just doing so many things in our schools and our districts and our service units that are just obsolete, but we're doing them because we've always done them, and we're just doing them and doing them. I had lunch with 25 superintendents a couple of weeks ago in Ohio, and we were talking about this, and I'm like, why do you do that? Why do you do that? And they're looking around, they're like, I don't know. And if we can't answer those questions, I mean, it's the same thing at our homes and our personal lives. Like, why are you hanging out with that neighbor? You don't really like them. And you're like, well, they invited us over. Right. So say that you don't want to go, right? And then you just took 3 hours on a Saturday. Use your voice, stand up, and you're a leader. Start acting like it. And don't be a workaholic. I mean, I was having the same conversation with my wife not too long, just like literally like today. She works in medicine. And I said, you know, you got to put barriers up. Today's your day off. The other doctors in the group can't just be like calling you and texting you and think, I'm like, no, like if it's an emergency, to Rachel's point, yes. But it's these random things. I said, if you respond, you should respond on Monday at 8:00 when you're back in the office. That's when you should respond. Unless somebody's dying. Okay. Like we get those things, right. But most times it's not. But if we do respond, then that tells them that I can reach out anytime. And it's the same for no matter what job you do. We have to have those barriers and those boundaries. And if we don't put them up, shame on us. And if our organization tries to break them and says, hey, I need to break this barrier, then the organization needs to do work. And if they don't want to do the work, then maybe they're not the organization for you.
Ooh, that's so good. Best advice I ever got from my superintendent. I think I was a first or second year administrator there. And I mean, I would wake up in the middle of the night, check my email, respond. And he was like, Lisa, you are teaching your staff and your parents that you will respond to them like that. You are teaching them that. You need to stop teaching them that. And I was like, you are so right.
I would say at some point in your career or your life, you're going to be on a learning curve. And, you know, I was just talking to another district leader about this, where they were having a hard time adjusting to their new position. And they're like, Rachael, I'm so stressed. I'm doing 16 hours a day. Like, I haven't felt like this ever. And I looked at her and I was like, not even as a first year principal, because I was like crying in the bathroom with the door locked. And she's like, no, that was easy. And so it was fascinating, the different timing that people find themselves on the learning curve, right? Some of them are pretty frequent, some of them are ongoing. And I think that sometimes we get pretty overwhelmed or flustered, and we start thinking we're drowning. And there's actually a predictable path and some predictable strategies that you can do to pull yourself out of those, or at least embrace it so it's not as painful. So some of those are finding mentors, being connected and having a great network of professional learning communities and friends, just like Adam and others, or the people in the IPC. Continuously learning and really tapping into people that have gone before you. And a lot of that falls into the same category of some of the strategies for women leaders. Oftentimes we're scared of failing in public, and we're really nervous, and we are perfectionists, and we want to practice in private. And I was talking to a brand new high school principal where she said, Rachel, I'm scared I'm going to fail, and I'm scared it's going to be public. My response to her was, friend, just count on it. You're going to fail. We've all failed. It's normal. And so really embracing that failure aspect and looking at it as a growth opportunity, and it's happening for you, not to you, and reframing what those thoughts are. I think when we hold ourselves back with those fears and the preconceived notions about what could go wrong, we limit ourselves to really live our full potential, to lead how we're meant to lead. And I think we tend to hold our strengths back too.
Yeah, well, listeners just got some great advice there, Rachel. I appreciate you sharing that. And I just, Shannon Harkin, she works for Heartland AAA. She's an expert on MTSS, and she just came and gave a keynote to our organization. She said, I am not an expert. I've just failed more times than other people. And so that's why I'm here. And it just totally reminded me of that advice that you gave to that principal. So Adam, tell us a little bit more about Kids Deserve It. And I know that in that book, there's a focus too about, having a purpose, and I'm really curious your take on, can you be an effective leader if you are not grounded in and have a pretty clear idea of what your purpose is?
No, you cannot be an effective leader if you don't know what your purpose is. I don't think you can be an effective human being if you don't know why you're here on this planet. Kids Deserve It started 6 years ago. Todd and I, my co-author, we just started Kids Deserve It. Didn't want to write a book. We just wanted to change the world. And it just grew because the message was simple: do what's best for kids. Dave Burgess called us up and said, hey, do you guys think about writing a book? And we said, no, we just want to change the world. We had a podcast, a Twitter chat. We blogged every week. And then finally, Dave convinced us to write a book. And the book just 5 years, this June was the 5-year anniversary. And I feel that book has really just resonated. It continues to resonate with people because it's just a very simple message. We as human beings, especially as leaders, we're really good at complicating really simple ideas. And the best way to mess up a good idea is to complicate the heck out of it. So that book is just super simple. And no matter what you do, if you're an assistant principal, assistant superintendent, if you don't know why you're there, then how can you do any work? And I would say, know why you're there, but keep that why simple, because when we have 20 to 25 priorities, that's too many. You're going to be doing those 20 to 25 with mediocrity. I'd rather do 3 to 5, like Kids Deserve It, in a simple way with fidelity. And again, that just goes back to adults, especially school leaders, especially superintendents. We do a really good job of complicating things. And I think the farther you get away from the classroom and the less time that you spend in the classroom when you've gotten away from the classroom, it's even easier to do because we just give things to teachers. And I remember my last principalship, I would get in arguments with my superintendent. I'm like, no, they can't do that. Like, we can't do that. And other principals would look at me like, dude, you can't talk like that. And I'm like, but I need to advocate for my team. And like, when was the last time they were in a school and actually spent like more than a 10-minute drive-by in a classroom, like really spent an entire week? And superintendents, I'm not pointing fingers and I'm not blaming. I understand the scope of the work, but just like being in classrooms and setting up barriers, you have to, people that are listening, spend that time in there to know what you actually have time to do. Because I'd rather do 3 to 5 things with fidelity really, really well. Otherwise, we're trying to carry 25 pizza boxes and we're going to get a little bit down the driveway. But what's going to happen is it's too much. We're going to drop them and then dinner is ruined. And that's just like an analogy for thinking about a school. We all have worked at the district office level, thinking about your district, thinking about just education in general.
I love that. And dinner is ruined. That could be a shirt. That could be a book, I think also. But one of the things that I love about this podcast is we all come to the table with this educational lens. But this is so applicable to people in other leadership roles as well. All the things you just said, Adam, I'm thinking about that in other industries. I'm like, yep, fits, that fits, that fits. So, as I was learning from you guys, as I was sitting on the fringes in a back table when you guys were speaking at the conference, and the backdrop behind you, Center for Innovative Leadership. So, obviously that's associated with NASP, but tell us a little bit about what that is, and what that offers.
Yeah, you bet. So NAESP started a fellow program a couple years back with Hamish Brewer and Andy Jacks, and it was under the umbrella of like innovative leadership. And so with the pandemic, it provided an amazing platform and opportunity to, again, shift, pivot, and expand and really look at what folks needed across the nation for our membership. So they expanded, they created an umbrella, the Center for Advancing Leadership, and underneath of those, I'd like to think of it as an umbrella. So each of the little different branches coming out, we have the Center for Equity, Women in Leadership, Innovative Leadership Practices with us. Oh man, Adam, I feel like I'm missing some middle school leaders. So kind of looking at all of our like specialized kind of spheres. Did I catch them all? Yep. Okay, good. So Adam and I were super fortunate to be able to take on the innovative leadership aspect. And so we have spent the last year really crafting an opportunity and platform for people to be able to connect and improve their practice when it comes to leadership, and not just having it be like a tech aspect, but like a well-encompassing way to be innovative with your leadership skills and practices in the building, out of the building, however you want to look at it. So we developed the Innovative Principal Circle, which we met monthly last year. We're branching out and we're doing some coaching and mentoring in addition to that. We also have our podcast where we're able to bring in some amazing leaders and share some best practices with folks. So really trying to help provide support and in the moment advice so it's timely for people. Adam, what did I miss and what would you like to add?
Yeah, when we came together in that space, there's something that I started years ago called Principles in Action. And my goal was to connect every principal around the country. And I didn't know what I wanted it to be. I just wanted to connect every principal. And it's kind of like franchised out. Like there's like other pockets of Principles in Action. And really what it was just a mindset of connecting, because being a school leader is isolating. Unless you really put yourself out there, it's you in your office in your building and you're the only school leader. And if you work in a big city or you work in rural Iowa, it doesn't matter. It can still be isolating. So I would say this is kind of like Principles in Action version 2 a little bit. And we're just trying to go deeper in a more purposeful way with bringing people together with monthly connections. We're going to be doing it a little bit differently next year and offering just some different opportunities, but just really showing people the value of connectedness. Because if I wasn't connected, I wouldn't be doing what I am. I wouldn't be friends with Rachael. I just wouldn't. Most of my friends are scattered all over the country, and they're educators because we understand each other. We know the work. And yes, I have friends locally. They're more like professional friends, and then when you connect for the first time, like at NAESP, you're like, Lisa, Adam, and it's like that slow-mo, like running across the beach, giving a hug. No, because we've known each other for like 2-3 years. We talk weekly, I send Christmas cards to people all over the country. I've been invited to weddings of people that I know. Some of them I've never even met. So that's really the goal of it. And the podcast supports it. The Zooms support it. Just people in the group texting or calling. We have a Voxer group, which is a great way just to keep people connected in different ways. So earlier, Lisa, you said, gosh, you guys don't just do this. You have all these different things. And that's why Rachael and I get along so well, because I can't just do one thing. And I know Rachael can't. But I think more importantly, though, it makes me a better person with what I'm doing, like my main piece, because these things keep me thinking. Like as we're talking now, I'm like thinking of new things that I wouldn't have thought about if I wasn't on this podcast. And Lisa, Rachael and I I've never met you if we hadn't done this fellowship and the IPC and everything else. So I just know that the upside is so much better than not doing all those different things. And yes, we both have to, all three of us, put up barriers. So, and then sometimes we'll do that. Like Rachel will text like, hey, I can't talk today. And I'm like, yeah. And I'll do the same. And we know that. And like I said, Rachel and I obviously have a very close relationship because we do a lot of work together, but you have to be that way with everybody, I think. So you do have those barriers like, hey, I'm just slammed this week. I'll catch you next week. And you know what? The podcast doesn't go out, but you know what? I spent time with my family. I went out for a run or a walk to get some mental health. I finished that book I really wanted to read. It is okay to say no, leaders. It's okay to say no. You're not letting people down. You're taking care of you.
And I think we need to get better at saying no. And every time you say no, you're saying yes to all the other things you want to put priority on. And it goes the other way, right? Every time you say yes, yes, and yes, it waters it all down. And then goes back to your point, Adam, dinners on the driveway. It doesn't make it in.
Yeah, I'd be willing to bet if you haven't taken Gallup's Strength Finder, if you have, that you guys probably both fall out with the achiever as one of your top 5 strengths. But I want to kind of end by asking, I'm sure there's some school leaders that are listening right now that may not have previously connected. What are some ways that they can get involved? What's the name of the podcast they can listen to if they're interested in any of those divisions within some of the Centers for Innovative Leadership or the Center for Equity, or what are some ways that they could reach out and get connected to a network?
Yeah, you bet. So Adam and I are both on Twitter. My handle is at Dr. Rachael George. Rachel is Rachael, a unique spelling. And then our podcast with NAESP, it's not a creative title, but it works. It's effective and clear, and it keeps it skinny. It is the NAESP Principal Podcast, and we are getting ready to kick off season 2 here in the next week or two.
Yeah, I'm Mr. Adam Welcome, Mr. Adam Welcome across all social media. That's my website. And in addition to the podcast I have with Rachel, I have 2 other podcasts. So I have a podcast called the Adam Welcome Podcast, which is like super quick 1 minute to 2 minute episodes weekly. And then I also have another podcast called The School District, which used to be called the Principal Crew Podcast, and I've rebranded it to make it more broad. Have a bunch of episodes coming out with superintendents because principals, I feel like we just need more alignment. The more work I do, there's these principals that want to do things, and then superintendents, and there's like we're just like kind of passing, and there needs to be more alignment. And I need to better understand the superintendency. I never want to be a superintendent, so I need to talk to as many as I can to understand it as much as I can. But I think that's the best place to find us. We're all over the internet, Rachel and I.
You are, yes. And also Rachel's book, Navigating the Leadership Curve, Adam's book, Kids Deserve It. And then Rachel, when does your next book come out?
I think we're thinking November. Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
So next couple months.
Yeah, we'll keep our eyes out for that for sure. But I just so appreciate you guys taking the time to be a part of this show. I know lots of leaders and school leaders will find a ton of value out of this episode. So thank you both so much for giving up your time and your knowledge today.
Thanks for having us, Lisa.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Supporting Leaders podcast. For more on supporting leaders, go to www.supportingleaders.org. Here you'll find links to the YouTube versions of our interviews and links to the podcast. You'll also find articles on leadership. To join in on the conversation, find the Supporting Leaders group on Facebook and find us on Instagram at Supporting Leaders.